My name is Amina, and what I am about to tell you happened to me approximately 9 years ago. Those were the days when my life was completely ordinary, peaceful, and simple. I had no idea that one day, hidden within the walls of my own home, there would be a darkness waiting to push my entire life into an abyss of terror. I was the youngest daughter of my parents. My 2 brothers and 1 sister had already moved to their own homes after their marriages. Only I remained in the house. My mother and father's biggest concern now was my marriage. My mother would often look at me and sigh deeply, saying, "Beta, if only your fate would also open up, our lives would find some peace." My father worked at a private company. His health was no longer what it used to be, but he still worked day and night to provide for us. My mother managed the household and I helped her with the chores. Our house was located at the very end of the village. As soon as evening fell, a strange silence would descend upon the area. In the middle of the courtyard stood an old tree, its dry branches swaying in the wind as if someone was standing in the darkness, slowly waving their hands. After some time, my marriage was arranged with a young man named Rayan. He worked in the city, was a quiet and soft-spoken person with a gentle demeanor. My family was happy with this match, and I too began to dream of a new future in my heart. 6 months later, we were married. After the wedding, I moved to Rayan's house. The initial days were truly like a dream. My in-laws seemed good on the surface. Rayan took great care of me, and I felt that perhaps my life would indeed pass in peace. I would wake up before Fajr, prepare breakfast, finish the household work, and wait for Rayan in the evening. Time was passing peacefully. But then one day, everything changed. That day is still etched in my memory, word for word. It was morning. Rayan had gone to the office. The rest of the family was also busy with their own tasks. I was cleaning my room when my gaze suddenly fell upon a dark corner of the room. There I saw a black, mud-stained bag lying. I stared at it for a few moments. I was sure it had not been there before. I don't know why, but as soon as I approached it, a strange fear began to settle in my heart. The air suddenly felt heavy. The warmth of the room turned into cold. My hands began to grow cold. I bent down and picked up the bag, and at that very moment, a stench hit my nostrils so foul that I stopped breathing. It was not ordinary rot. It was the smell of something that had been decaying and rotting in confinement for a very long time, as if dirt, blood, filth, and death had all been trapped together in a single bag. My hands began to tremble. My heart told me to throw it away immediately, but my mind seemed paralyzed. With trembling hands, I opened the bag and my scream died in my throat. Inside were dried, rotten flesh, a few blackened bones, knots of black thread, a misshapen amulet, and some hair that looked human. The life seemed to drain out of my body. I sat down on the ground for a few moments, my eyes fixed on the bag but my body unable to move. It felt as if there was someone else in the room besides me, watching me. After a long time, I gathered my courage, wrapped the bag, and set it aside. I decided that I would show it to Rayan when he came home in the evening. But as soon as I touched that bag, something inside me began to change. By the afternoon of that same day, a headache started in my head as if someone had driven nails into my temples. There was a strange weakness in my body. My heart was restless. I kept looking back again and again as if someone was following me. When Rayan came in the evening, the first thing I did was place that bag before him. I asked, "What is this? And where did it come from in our room?" Rayan looked at me in surprise. "What bag?" When I opened it and showed him, the color drained from his face. He stepped back. What is this thing?" I said. "That's exactly what I'm asking you." The entire family gathered, but the surprising thing was that no one knew anything about the bag. No one knew how it had gotten there. Rayan took the bag and went outside somewhere. Later, when I asked, he gave a brief reply. "I threw it very far away, just don't think about it." But by then it was already too late. From the very next day, my condition began to change. At night, I stopped being able to sleep. When I closed my eyes, I would feel as if someone was whispering close to my ear. Sometimes I felt as if someone was slowly crawling under my bed. Sometimes I had the sensation that someone was standing silently by my head, watching me. One night my eyes suddenly opened. The room was dark, but I could clearly feel that I was not alone. With a pounding heart, I slowly turned my head and saw something standing near the door, a tall shadow. I wanted to scream, but the voice was trapped in my throat. I blinked and the thing was gone. The next morning, Rayan said, "Amina, last night you got up from the bed yourself. You went and stood in front of the door. I called you twice, but you didn't even turn around." The ground slipped from beneath my feet, because I remembered nothing at all. After this, my condition worsened day by day. Sometimes I would sit silently for hours. Sometimes I would suddenly burst into loud laughter. Sometimes I would look at everyone with strangers' eyes as if I didn't recognize them. One day, Rayan's sister asked me for some water, and I don't know why, but my hand rose on its own and I slapped her so hard that the entire room fell silent. I myself was shocked. That was not me. There was something else inside me. Something that was seeing through my eyes, acting through my hands, but I had no control over it. Then my voice began to change. Sometimes it was very high-pitched, like an old woman's. Sometimes it was so heavy that it sent shivers through the bodies of those who heard it. The nights had become like doomsday. Sometimes I would find myself standing in the courtyard in the middle of the night, though I had no memory of how I got there. Sometimes utensils in the kitchen would clatter on their own. Sometimes I would hear the sound of someone dragging themselves across the ceiling of the room, and sometimes there would be such a soft knock on the door that the listener would doubt whether the sound had actually come or not. Then one night something happened that broke everyone. It was the dead of night. Everyone was asleep. Suddenly there were 3 heavy knocks on my door. Thack, thack, thack. In a trembling voice I asked, "Who is it?" Silence. Then the door began to creak open on its own. Outside was complete darkness, and from that darkness an ice-cold wind entered. I felt as if someone had come and stood right behind me, so close that their breath was touching my throat. I turned around, but there was nothing there. The next morning there was such fear in Rayan's eyes that I had never seen before. He said, "Last night you were sitting by my head and you were reciting something, but that was not your voice. That voice, Allah protect us, that was a man's voice, very heavy, very terrifying." Hearing this, all the blood seemed to dry up in my body. Now the family called my parents. My mother came and hugged me, crying, but I seemed unable to even recognize her. My father kept his hand on my forehead, but a cold hatred seemed to have filled me. I was avoiding their eyes. Honestly, I felt as if they were not even my own family. Finally, the family decided to call a religious healer. First, an elderly Maulvi from the neighborhood came. White beard, prayer beads in hand, seriousness on his face. He sat me in the courtyard and began reciting the Quran in a loud voice. As soon as the recitation began, there was a strange commotion inside me. My body began to tremble. A fire seemed to ignite in my head. Noise filled my ears. The Maulvi placed his hand on my head, and suddenly my hand pushed his arm away with such force that he stumbled backward. The family screamed. Then a voice came from my mouth that was never mine. "Stop." The voice was so heavy, so terrifying, that everyone standing in the courtyard took a step back. Sweat appeared on the Maulvi's face. After a while he said, panting, "This matter is not ordinary. The affliction is very severe, very old, and very stubborn." And then he left. After his failure, silence fell over the entire house. 2 days later, a famous religious healer was called, about whom it was said that even the most powerful jinn could not stand before him. He came to our house with 2 of his disciples. As soon as he entered the courtyard, he surveyed the surroundings for a few moments. There was deep seriousness on his face. Then he said in a low voice, "The atmosphere of this house is very heavy. Here there is not just a shadow, but also the effect of someone's black magic." Hearing this, the color drained from everyone's faces. My mother's hands began to tremble, and Rayan looked silently at the ground. The healer sat me before him. His disciples stood on both sides. Then he opened the Quran and began reciting verses in a loud voice. As soon as his recitation began, a strange restlessness arose inside me. My body began to tremble, my breathing became rapid, and everything before my eyes began to blur. Suddenly, my neck bent backward and my lips began to move on their own. Then a heavy voice emerged from my mouth that was never mine. "Stop! This is not your place." The voice was so terrifying that everyone standing in the courtyard had goosebumps. My mother started crying in fear. Rayan stepped forward, but the healer raised his hand to stop him. The healer began reciting verses with even more force. My body began to jerk violently. It felt as if some force was writhing inside me. Suddenly, the sound of utensils falling came from the kitchen. The bulb hanging in the courtyard began to swing violently. Strange sounds of things hitting the walls began to emerge. The healer said in a stern voice, "Tell me who sent you." My lips trembled. My eyes turned red, and then a name came from my mouth. Suleiman. Hearing this name, Rayan became like stone. Suleiman was his close relative who had been jealous of our marriage from the very beginning. Silence fell over the house. My mother covered her face in panic. The healer took a deep breath and said, "Jealousy is a very dangerous thing. And in this jealousy, black magic was done on this girl. This jinn was made to possess her through that same magic." After this, the real battle began. The healer continued reciting verses of the Quran with all his strength. His disciples held my hands and feet, but the force inside me had grown so strong that many times I would shake them off. Utensils in the kitchen began to fall loudly. The sound of someone running on the roof began. The wind suddenly became strong. My body was writhing on the ground, and my voice would sometimes become like a woman's and sometimes heavy like a stranger man's. Then suddenly, the healer came close to me. He placed both his hands on my head and said in a loud voice, "I command you by the order of Allah, leave. This body is not yours." At that very moment, such a scream came from my mouth that it seemed the entire house had trembled. Tears were not flowing from my eyes. It was as if fire was pouring out. My breaths became rapid and my body began to tremble completely. Then that heavy voice echoed one last time. "I am leaving, but the one who sent me will not rest in peace." With that, my body gave a violent jolt, and I fell unconscious to the ground. The entire house fell silent. Only the sound of everyone's rapid breathing could be heard. After some time, when I opened my eyes, for the first time I felt a strange peace inside me, as if a very heavy burden had been lifted from my chest. My mother sat beside me, reciting the Quran, and Rayan looked at me as if he had found me all over again. After this, for several weeks, the Quran was recited in the house every day. Gradually, everything began to improve. The terrifying voices stopped. The night knocks ended. The shadows also disappeared. A few months later, news came that Suleiman had been badly injured in a strange accident. People said that he would wake up screaming at night, repeatedly saying the same thing. "He is standing next to me. He is watching me." That day, for the first time, I understood how blind jealousy can make a person. And I also understood that if Allah is the protector, no force in the world can harm a person. Even today, when the night is deep and the wind creates strange sounds by hitting the trees, I remember that black bag. The stench, the shadow, the knocks, and that voice that was not mine but came from my own mouth. And then I say in my heart, if Allah is with you, no power of darkness can destroy a person.